Hi everybody, it's me, Dr. Christina Hibbert here for day 4 of our Replenish Challenge. I am live on Facebook and Instagram. Oh, no, Facebook and YouTube, but it will be posted later on Instagram as well on IGTV. I'm so grateful for this challenge. It has been so fun to hear what all of you guys have been up to, what you've been doing. So as you watch this, I know most of you watch these replays later and don't get to catch us live, but please be sure to comment below and let me know what you're working on, or make sure you're part of our Motherhood 2.0 group where I can hear about what you're doing. I've heard some really cool things that people have been doing to take better care of themselves this week. I saw one of our members she realized this week that she needed more interpersonal connection, like real connection. And so she posted on Facebook, and I saw her do this, and I was so proud of her. She just asked her friends and said, hey, I need more like face-to-face connection. Who's willing to get together in real life and, support each other? And so I love seeing that our members are not only taking care of ourselves, but we're asking others to help care for us too, and we're letting that love in. Happy Thursday, Melissa. You're so awesome. I'm so glad you're here. And today we're talking about, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about love. And it seems kind of generic and it seems kind of basic, but I'll tell you, I think this is the one thing that of anything in the Replenish model that I've created, of anything, this is the one thing that can make all the difference, right? Because when we feel love in our life, when we feel full of love, then we can't help but then want to share it. And what we try to do is we too often try to just, we are caretakers. That's why we're doing the self-care challenge. And most of you that are doing it are women or moms or are caretakers in some way. And we tend to just want to give, which is great, and love, which is awesome. I mean, of course it's awesome. But we have to be full enough to then let that fullness flow over into everybody else too. And if we can kind of just switch around our way that we think about love and loving and being loved, you'll see that it becomes a replenishing cycle. And that's what we're focused on today, is what I call, there's 3 things we're going to touch on today. Number 1 is what I call the love triangle. I just came up with that when I was not able to sleep the other night. And I thought that's perfect, but it's not the kind of love triangle you normally would think of, but the love triangles are number 1. Number 2, we're going to be talking about giving and receiving, that cycle of giving and receiving. And number 3, we're going to touch on another triangle, what I call the pyramid of self-worth. I know if you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard about the pyramid of self-worth. You've probably been able to learn a little bit about that. I've done several videos with it, and hopefully it's going to be helpful today, because we're talking not only about love as far as like love from other people for us, but how do we love ourselves? And really that's, if I'm being honest, as excuse me, as a psychologist, that is the underlying issue that I find everywhere I go and everybody that I deal with, and especially women and those who are caretakers, which many women are, and that's why I always kind of focus on women and moms, is because we are so good at giving. We are so good at loving and helping and serving, but we are not good at replenishing ourselves with that love. And that's where we struggle. Excuse me. I think I need to get some water here. Hold on a second. As I drip all over myself. Okay. That's where we struggle the most. In fact, I was just last night talking with somebody. I was asked to speak to a large group of women coming up at the end of January down in Gilbert, Arizona. So if you happen to be there, come by. I'm going to post it soon. And she was asking, what is the one thing that you mostly talk about when you talk to groups of women? And that's it, self-worth. Self-worth is the biggest thing. So number 1, let's talk about the love triangle. The love triangle, get us going here, is very simple, but very powerful, and a very important way for us to reconceptualize love and being loved, loving and being loved, this cycle that we're going to be talking about today, and how do we complete that cycle. So when we're talking about the love triangle, we're just going to put some love in here. It's really about the triangle of who we're loving and who's loving us, right? So we know ourselves, we are in there. So there's self right here, and then we have others, which of course we know that when we are dealing with love and loving others, that's important. We have others and ourselves, but we often forget this third element, and I am going to say God, because that's my belief system. Higher power, whatever is bigger than you, okay? So when we're talking about the love triangle, it has to be a complete triangle. And what we're talking about here is we need to, yes, we need to love others, but how do we do that unless we have received love ourselves? So when we let God, higher power, the universe, however you phrase it, when we let that divine love in, then we have more to give to others. And of course, these go both ways. As we send love to the divine, to God, and to others, we then get it back, don't we? And so it has to be this kind of, and then they're responsible for this part. But it's very simple and very core to what we're talking about today, is that it's not just about us loving other people or making them love us. It's about giving and receiving love with the higher purpose, with that divine connection, because that's the kind of love that fills us so full that we can't help but then want to pour over and share. So the other day we were talking about energy, and we were talking about needing to unplug or replug or replenish or fill our cup up. So if you think about a cup, like if we are this chalice, let's say a beautiful chalice, not just a cup. And I'm sorry for you YouTubers that it's not quite as quality as the Facebook video, but that's kind of where I'm devoting my attention. If we are this beautiful chalice and we are not full, how do we, let's say the love is the water that can fill up us, right? And if we don't have enough, how do we then share it? We tap out, we burn out, we don't feel the love because we haven't been replenishing that love cycle, right? We haven't been working in all these ways of the love triangle. We've just been maybe doing one and forgetting all the others. And yes, I would say that a big part, and we'll talk in a moment about the other triangle, the triangle of self-worth, when we're talking about feeling love for ourselves and filling that love up, it all comes from doing both of these, loving others, loving God, and letting God's love in and letting others love into us too to fill us up. So as we become more full, if you think about it, if we become so overflowing with love because we've received so much, we just have all that more to pour out. It's just pouring out over everybody else and onto everybody else, and it's also keeping us full too. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about giving and receiving. And the cycle of give and receive love has to be complete, okay? So I think of this all the time. This is our number 2, when I go to the beach. I love to go to the beach. My mother-in-law lives near the beach half the year, so I go visit all the time. And when I go to the beach, I think about this all the time as I watch the ocean waves. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the love. And I think about the waves and how they ebb and flow. And if you think about it, if they just kept flowing, we would have a problem. It would be a tidal wave. It would be a tsunami, right? We'd have flooding. It would be an issue. And if they kept ebbing and just kept going away, we would have no more ocean, right? It would be dried up. And that is exactly what happens with us, isn't it? It's exactly what happens with us. If we don't have that complete cycle, we either overflow, meaning we give away all our love and we flood everybody else, and then we end up ebbing back and we're dried up. We don't have anything left to give. But this cycle of give and receive has to be complete. So if you'll forgive me for quoting myself, I wrote about this, and I really like how I wrote about this in my book, This Is How We Grow. It really, to me, kind of points to this idea. So let's see here. It is better to give than to take, but receiving is not the same as taking, right? So think about that. A lot of we women have that hard time thinking, well, I don't need to receive love. I don't need to take, because we're confusing the two terms. It's not, receiving and taking are not the same thing, right? Taking implies selfish motives, withholding, and lack of love. Receiving is lovingly accepting that which has already been given, right? It's saying someone wants to give us a gift, and they wrap it all up nicely and they give it to us and we're like, no, I'm good, I don't need that. Or we might even do this and go, sure, I'll take that. And then we go put it up in the closet and we hide it and we never open it. We don't even know what it is. We're not able to even use it. And it was probably something we really needed or really loved. And that's how love is. If we are not receiving the love, actually taking it, opening it, using it, then we are going to tap out. And it's not the same as taking, right? So yes, receiving love is as important as giving love. And yes, it is also the key to greater love. We cannot give greater love until we learn to receive it, right? It has to go both ways. So let's see, receiving love is also the key to self-love. We're going to talk next about the pyramid of self-worth and self-love. And so many of life's struggles come from failing to receive love. If you think about it, from spouses, children, family, friends. I mean, I see this all the time in my practice. I do a lot of couples work, I do family work, and I see people trying. They're trying to love each other. They're giving out love, but they're not receiving it from each other. And that's where they go wrong. That's where we have a problem, is that they don't know how to either give it or receive it in the right way. And so we get these couples arguing or families fighting because, she doesn't care about me or he doesn't care about me, because they just don't know how to receive that love. And even if they know how, they're not doing it. And we can get so into that kind of thing where we're just like, well, I'm not going to let them love me, or I'm not going to let that love in because they're just doing it to whatever, get back at me, right? So we really have to be mindful of this and think about this. When we block or ignore the love we are given, it becomes a habit. Soon we've forgotten that innate ability we once had to just let love in. We forget how to love ourselves, how to be gentle and kind, and we forget how to let God love us, how to feel and acknowledge our innate worth and potential. Learning self-love is the gateway of truly loving others, for it's hard to give something we have not yet received. Receiving is what it's all about. When we're talking about loving, receiving is essential. Thank you for the thumbs up. So we've got to have this complete cycle. We've got our first triangle. We've got to have love flowing in all ways. We've got to give and receive love. And remember, give and receive is not the same thing as taking. Taking is more of a selfish act. We're not taking it, we're receiving it. It's a gift that we are opening ourselves up to. And then number 3, and I guess I can still do it here. Okay, number 3 is we have to work on self-love and self-worth. And this is, again, the core issue that I find everybody, underneath all of our troubles, all of our struggles, everything that we go through, this is what we really struggle with, is this issue of self-worth and who am I? And am I good enough? And do people care enough about me? And do I care enough about myself? And actually, I was thinking about this when we talk about self-love here, and I'm just going to kind of go through the pyramid of self-worth quickly and focus on self-love, which is the third element. We need to remember that if we are not willing to let self-love in, we are the block, right? And I think that is so true, so often the case. I mean, this week we're working on replenishment, and we're working on self-care, we're working on taking care of ourselves, right? And so as we do that, we need to think about how many of the things that have held you back, and this is a great question, how many of the things that hold you back or have held you back, and you can answer or comment if you have an idea, have been because of you. It's been a block that you have set up. You won't let the love in. You feel like you have to get up and work all the time and you can't stop and slow down. You won't let yourself take a break, right? It really is us. It's not that our schedules are so crazy, life is too busy, work is too hard, there's too many people to take care of. Trust me, I know. I've got 6 kids, and even though they don't all live at home, this week has been insane. I've got one going to a whole new country for his mission, and I don't even know, it's like the fourth smallest country in the world, so I've been worried about him. I got another one that just had a birthday and moved to LA to become a musician. I've got other ones here with problems with their friends. I mean, it's busy. But that is not why we don't love ourselves and take the time for ourselves. That is not why we are bad at self-care. That is not why we don't feel replenished. We don't feel replenished because we block ourselves. And that's why the pyramid of self-worth is so helpful. And even if you've heard me talk about it before, I hope that you will take some time to focus on it and to actually implement it into your life. Okay, so the pyramid of self-worth, and this is kind of small. Actually, I'm gonna make it bigger. I think that'll be more helpful. Okay. And you might be wondering why I have this banner up here. And we're talking about love. This is a cute little, this was what I got for Mother's Day from my family. And it has a little loving message from each one of my kids and my husband. And I keep it here to remind me that I do matter and that they do care. There are ways that we can love ourselves by letting that love in, even just with small reminders, right? Okay, so if we're talking about the pyramid of self-worth, now this is what I created years ago because in my psychology practice, I was seeing this. I was seeing this over and over, that the people that would come to talk to me were struggling ultimately with self-worth. And I when people tell me, and I've had this happen, when people tell me like, that's not a problem for me. I just immediately go, in my head, I'm like, well, it definitely is a problem for you then, if you're saying it's not. Because, who of us doesn't ever struggle to feel good enough, right? And let's remember that there's a continuum, too, of insecurity, let's say. And on the one hand is, well, let's say insecurity. I feel totally insecure. And on the other hand is pride. I'm awesome. I'm so awesome. This is kind of our, if we're talking about self-worth, this is kind of the continuum of self-worth. And it goes both ways. So the people that are like, oh, I don't ever struggle with that. And I don't have a problem. And self-worth isn't an issue for me. Or, you know what? I almost have too much confidence. I've heard that so many times. And it's like, well, if you have too much confidence, that's called pride. And that's like overcompensating for something. We want to be somewhere in the middle here. It's not like I'm so awesome. It's like my teenage boys versus my teenage girls, especially one teenage boy right now who walks around shirtless all the time and is looking in the window and like flexing when he walks by. And, he just thinks he's so awesome. Then he's like, I'm humble. Like, I don't need to work on anything. And it's like, okay, that is so the opposite of humble, and you just really don't get it. On the flip side, then there's my, 15-year-old daughter who's like, oh, I'm just so unattractive, and I gained weight, and we're so hard on ourselves as women, but it's all insecurity, really, and it's all false self-worth. It's not actual self-worth, which comes from within. And that's another important thing to remember before we do this pyramid, is that there is a difference between self-esteem and self-worth. This is all my theory, which I developed because I wanted to know how to help people actually feel their worth and actually know their worth and actually be able to focus on the things that were of greatest value to them and feel good about themselves and not feel like they're pushed around all the time by self-esteem, because self-esteem is different. It is how we think, how we feel about ourselves. It's how we look. It's what other people say or think about us. It's us in comparison to other people, if you think about it. And yes, we want to have healthy self-esteem. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel like we're good at things. We want to do things that are great. But if you think about most of the models of self-esteem, how to build self-esteem, they are all focused around, you just have to be better. You have to try harder. You have to work harder. You have to be the best at something and just find what you're good at and then go do that. But the problem is there's always going to be somebody better. Always. So that's not going to last. And it's all based on what's out here versus self-worth, which is who I really am down here in my, not just in my gut, but like in my being, who I really am, who I always have been, who I'm working to be. That is self-worth. And this is my way of developing self-worth. So if we talk about self-worth and self-love, let's see here, and self-worth. Okay, if our goal is at the top here, self-worth, then there's 3 levels of this pyramid of self-worth. The number 1 is self-awareness. And you have been doing that this week with this challenge. You have been, hopefully, you've been taking some of the assessments we've done today. We have a self-esteem assessment you can do that you should have received in your emails. And if you haven't received the emails, Maybe you're not registered, and if you're not registered, you can still go and register to get all the emails that we've had so far, because we've had a worksheet or a tool each day. And the first day was also an evaluation, a self-evaluation. Actually, the second day was evaluation. Today was another evaluation. It's all helping us to become more self-aware and to see the things that we're doing well and the things that we are not doing so well. And how can we improve? That's what self-awareness is all about. It's seeing what I say that is the good, the bad, the ugly, yes, being willing to see even the ugly, and the exceptional. The exceptional is so hard for us, especially we caretakers, we women, we forget our exceptionality. But as I've always said, that's my superpower, is to see other people's exceptionality. And that's why I do what I do, is because of love, love. I mean, I really do love you guys. I mean, is it too early in the relationship to say that? Is that like creepy? But I do. I love the people that I get to serve and that I get to talk to and work with and help. And that's why I do this. And I'm aware of that. And once we become aware of the good stuff, the exceptional things about us, and the not so good, our weaknesses, then we can do number 2, which is self-acceptance. And this is our hardest one, I found. It's just a lifelong process of accepting ourselves over and over and over and over, becoming more and more aware of different parts of ourselves. As we change and grow through life, we're going to see new things in ourselves. We're going to see new weaknesses and new strengths and new abilities and new possibilities, right? And we then can work on accepting each of those. And so as we work to accept ourselves, we can do that kind of piecemeal, like, okay, I accept that I'm bad at gardening, which I am, and I also accept that I'm a good teacher, or that I'm a good speaker, or that I'm a good friend, or I'm a good, listener, whatever you might be. And work to accept those things. And the ones that we don't accept, the problem is we fight ourselves against those. And you'll see when you start to work on this, that if you're not accepting yourself, you are fighting yourself. And as you fight yourself, that's why we get things like mental illness and relationship problems and stress and frustration and overwhelm and anxiety and worry and parenting challenges. It's not always because everybody else is causing the problems. A lot of the times it's because we are not accepting that, you know what, I need some help with this, or I need to take care of myself before I can do better at being a parent or being an example or a role model or doing my job, right? So an example here, last night I went away, which wasn't very far. I went about 15 minutes out of town because we have a friend who had an empty cabin. And as I told you, I have not been sleeping well this week, and this, I need this replenish challenge. Let's just say that, because I am feeling tapped out. Everything's a mess. I'm totally unorganized. But I knew yesterday that I needed to take care of myself and get a solid night of sleep, or else I was just going to be a mess and kind of spiral downward. So I went, and I just literally went there, slept through for like 11 hours, which I haven't done forever. And then I got dressed and I came back this morning, and my husband got the kids out to school, and I feel like a new woman. So are we accepting that we have problems, that I need a little extra help, or I need a little time away? Or are we accepting that, you know what, I need a break and I deserve a break and it's okay? Are we accepting that we need to replenish, that we need to reorganize, that we need to whatever your challenge is? Okay? And only then, once we've practiced self-awareness and self-acceptance, can we actually feel self-love. And self-love, I always say, has 4 elements, okay? Well, not 4 elements. There are 4 ways specifically that we can practice self-love, okay? So number 1 is self-kindness, as I call it. Okay, so self-kindness to me is, are you doing kind things for yourself? Are you taking care of yourself and doing kind things? So think about if you had a friend that needed something, what would you do to help them? Okay, and would you do that for yourself? So if you would go take care of her kids because she was like desperate and needed a break, would you get a babysitter for yourself and let yourself have that break? If you would maybe, take care of your sleep better. Something kind might be giving yourself some time to take a bath or go out with friends or whatever it might be. Doing kind things for yourself, okay? Number 2 is self-compassion, which I differentiate this from self-kindness, even though they're similar, in the sense that self-compassion refers to how we think about ourselves and how we let ourselves feel when we're talking about, when we're talking about being gentle with ourselves in our mind, okay? So how are you thinking about yourself? And are you being compassionate? Are you giving yourself the benefit of the doubt and letting yourself have that, oh yeah, I do need a break, or oh yeah, you know what, I'm totally messed up and it's okay? Or are you way hard on yourself and harsh on yourself, okay? And how would you express compassion for, let's say, your child or somebody you love? And are you doing that for you? Number 3 is self-compassion, self-care. Okay? And this goes with all the things we've been talking about this week, and we will be talking about. We're only halfway through our challenge. We've got 4 more days of learning how to take care of ourselves, how to replenish ourselves. And replenish means, again, I love that word because it reminds me of self-worth. It's just refilling who we really are. It's replenishing the source it needs. And if we're not taking care of our needs, then that needs attention, right? That's part of the self-love. And then number 4 is let love in. I've shared before that I haven't always been good at this. And I didn't realize I was not good at it until I had this crazy professor back in graduate school who, he does this Gestalt therapy. And it's this type of therapy where you kind of like get in people's face. It's kind of like in your face kind of therapy, like pointing out the obvious and just saying it and then seeing how people deal with it. So it's a little, it works for some people it doesn't. So I go in to talk to him about my assignment, and he says to me, he sits me down, he sits there and he's like staring at me like, And then he just says, "You're difficult to love." I was like, what? I was so offended. So of course that was total meat for the therapy, even though it wasn't therapy session, but that's just how he was. And I was like, how dare you say I'm difficult to love? You don't know me. You have no clue who I am. And I have lots of people that love me. And he says, I didn't say that you weren't lovable or that people didn't love you. I said you're difficult to love. I'm thinking, how do you know this? I've literally just been in your class and just literally sat and talked with you. I didn't even talk with you. I just sat down. Like, you don't know me, right? But he was right. He was right that I was difficult to love because, especially at that time, my insecurities were coming out in the sense that, oh, if you didn't accept me, like if I got any hint of that, and I'm really pretty good at like reading people and stuff, if I got any hint of that, I'd just push you away first so that I wouldn't get hurt. And by the end of the semester, I actually wrote my final paper on Dr. Budge was right, why Dr. Budge was right that I'm difficult to love. And it was a big eye-opener for me to see that I wasn't letting love in and how much we block love. Someone offers to help and we say no. Someone offers to do something kind and we're like, nope, I've got it. I'm good. I don't need anything. And I almost did that last night when my husband said, why don't you go spend the night here and just actually get a normal night of sleep? And I was like, no, I should be home. There's too much to do. And he's, and then I was like, oh, duh, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow. I need to actually be the role model of this too. So let love in, let people help you. And then when we have all this going, we have our self-awareness, our self-acceptance, our self-love, we are going to feel more of our self-worth. And that's ultimately what we're talking about when we talk about love as far as replenishing that complete cycle of love, the love triangle, making sure that's complete, and making sure that we are continually kind of working through this pyramid of self-worth so that we continually replenish our source of love and being loved. Now, to wrap up, I just want to share another little quote from my book, This Is How We Grow, on love here. Hopefully this is helpful to you. My favorite definition of love explains what I mean. Quote, I define love thus: the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Now, first of all, I love that. That's from Scott Peck from The Road Less Traveled. So he defines love as the ability to extend ourselves in order to better nurture our own or another person's spiritual growth. And if you think about love, that's what it's all about. You know, it's about loving ourselves, it's about loving other people, but it's actually about helping ourselves and others grow. As we nurture and love our family, neighbors, world, and self, we grow together in love. Love comes from God and nature and light and fills us if we let it, like a well that never runs dry. As we receive this love, we become so full of love, it pours out of our eyes and mouth and arms, filling those around us too. Love cannot be kept, but must be given and received. A continuous cycle that, when complete, generates greater and higher love. Yes, choosing to grow is choosing to love. Everybody, I hope you will get out there and think of today. Hopefully you've done your self-assessment and think about what you might need to love yourself better and to love others better. Another challenge you could do today would be to make a list of the things that are loving and not loving. I don't know if you can see that. I did this in my journal once, and it became part of my book here. Loving myself is not in one column, and loving myself is in another column. And that way you can better understand that when you're doing the things in the loving myself is not column, that you need to stop and replace it with something in the column that says, this is what is loving. So that's very helpful. Thanks, Melissa. I'm so glad you like that. And until tomorrow, just focus on how to let that love in and how to replenish your source of love, okay? And keep that with you every day. Tomorrow we're going to talk about our E, which is enjoy. Woohoo! We're going to talk about how to feel more joy in our lives. And yes, there is a difference between happiness and joy. And we're going to talk about how to kind of get more of both in our life, more joy, more happiness in our everyday, because boy, if anything replenishes us, it's that love today that we have and the joy that we can have too. And they go so hand in hand. I can't wait to talk about that with you tomorrow at noon. Be sure to join us back here and be sure to comment and email me. Continue to let me know what you're up to. I really, really love getting to hear all the cool things you're doing. And it's been really helpful to others in the community to be able to hear that too. So everybody have a great day. Be sure to get out there and love and be loved. All right. See you later.